Finland, Norway, Sweden, Iceland and Denmark are the best 5 countries in the world to be a mother, according to a Save the Children survey this week. The UK came 26th, equal with Belarus, down 3 places from last year. Perhaps one factor is, although mothers are now the main breadwinners in a third of British couples with children, they still do most of the housework, cooking and caring. Are fathers doing their fair share? Dr. Pam Spur, lifestyle coach. Was it 26th equal with Belarus? That's even worse than last night in the Eurovision Song Contest. It's not great, is it?
I'm not surprised at all, because men are not pulling their weight. The Institute of Public Policy did a large study in 2012 which found that 8 out of 10 married women still do the majority of the housework, and that over the last few decades we just haven't seen this change. Now, Nicky, one of the 3 top reasons why people divorce is neglect, feeling neglected, feeling lack of respect, because it's not the big things that break a couple up, like, oh, which city should we live in, because people realize as a couple, well, yeah, I can see their point of view on a big issue. It's the little things, when a man won't help lay the table, won't pick up after the kids, won't, you know, do a washing. Those are the things that erode relationships and damage them.
Rebecca, come in here, because you've written a book which is, that's why you're here,
Yep.
Shattered, Modern Motherhood and the Illusion of Equality. There are some, perhaps some would say, very old-fashioned attitudes that persist. Hello, honey, I'm home. A woman's work is never done.
Yep.
All that stuff. How much is it cultural?
Yeah. Well, I think the interesting thing is a lot of it's cultural, but it's absolutely linked to the supporting structures and the legislation in a country. And I think it's no accident that the countries that come out top in that Save the Children research in terms of having a good environment for mothers are exactly the same countries that encourage fathers to do as much as possible. So these are countries that lay down very firm cultural expectations that fathers will play their fair share in the household. They're the countries that have that do as much as possible to bring fathers in the early days of childcare, so they have shared parental leave.
Hard habits to break in this country.
Hard habits to break, and it takes determination and focus, and actually a bit of a stick as well as a carrot to get fathers involved. So what those countries have is they have a long length of ring-fence paternity leave for fathers, so that it's use it or lose it. Fathers either take that paternity leave or it completely falls away. The mother can't take it up. And it forces fathers, in just the same way that mothers are forced, to come to terms with childcare.
It's funny that's seen as a stick, isn't it?
Well, you know, it's a carrot and it's a stick. And, you know, parenthood is learnt on the job, and you have to take a deep breath and you get in there, and it's really, really hard, and it's really, really rewarding, and it's sort of, you know, it's 2 sides of the same coin. And I'm sure that the mothers and fathers in this room would agree with that, but you've got to get in there in the first place.
Well, and we are in 2014, and we still do not have pay parity between men and women. So outside of the home, we are so lackadaisical about the 15.7% difference that women earn outside the home. We still have the pervasive attitude within the home that women are still going to get along and just do the things.
We do have pay parity.
We do not.
No,
Office of National Statistics.
This is how we have pay parity. In our 20s and 30s, men and women get paid the same. We don't have a gender pay gap. We have a parenting pay gap. The pay gap only kicks in when we start to force mothers to be the main carer and force fathers to be the main earner. You only have to look at the countries at the top of the list where the roles are shared more equally. Fathers have equal rights. We've given women equal rights in the workplace, the equal opportunities going to work. We have not given fathers an equal right to take on the role of being the carer. Unless you get equal, it's the 2 sides of the same coin. Unless you give equal rights to fathers as well as equal rights to mothers, as has happened more in the Scandinavian countries, nothing will change.
I've got
what rights do you want?
No disparity is
Glen, what rights do you want fathers to have?
There are 3 key rights. First, when a child is born, mothers are given parental rights, but fathers aren't. I think that's wrong. I think both mothers and fathers should have rights from the moment
What do you mean by that?
There's a right called it's called parental responsibility, but it's a right to make decisions about health, about the religion of your child, and so on and so forth. It's automatically given to all mothers. It is not given to all fathers. There's only two ways.
Anti-married couples.
There's only two ways that a father can automatically get it. One is by being granted it by the mother when she marries him. The other is being by granted it by the state when the state gives it. So that's the first thing.
Right.
We're treated differently because of our sex.
Okay.
The second thing is then all the support the state puts in terms of child benefits and other kind of supports goes directly to the mother, not the father. And that says basically, mother, you're the primary carer. And the third key thing is in terms of parental leave rights. The last Labour government introduced the most unequal parental leave rights in the world. They made them mothers' rights, not parents' rights. So a couple, when they sit down and make the choice about who's going to actually take on the responsibility of bringing up this child, they're forced into making certain decisions unless there's a massive income disparity between the mother and the father. My daughter's 16 now. I was at home for the first 3 years of her life. It was easier to make that decision back in the last century, in 1997, than it would be now, because actual parental rights were a lot more equal back in the 90s, but they were less generous.
You've got to say, though, men can see beyond, even if a man has fewer rights, as you're saying, and quite rightly, we need to look at that. Men can see beyond that. And when they come home, and if both partners are working, or if mum is at home as a mother, men can come home and still help out. They have the intelligence to see past the fact that perhaps they don't have that right.
Is that not happening?
No, it is not happening. As I said, 8 out of 10 women do
It's
more.
also the case, though, that even in heterosexual households where there are no children, women do 2/3 of the housework.
Do they really?
They do, and that's right
He
across
said,
the Western
looking
world.
surprised.
It's also the case that as women earn more, once they start to earn more than the man, they actually take on more housework. So you can sort of do less as you earn more, but as soon as you overtake him, then you end up doing more housework and more childcare than he does, which is a sort of interesting anomaly.
Isn't it? Yeah.
The other thing that we need to be really aware of is that men and women have different views about what's fair. So that women tend to see fairness in terms of doing equal amounts. Yes. So that you know, there's a certain amount of work being done. Some of it's paid work, some of it's work with the children. And the women will see hours put in equal terms as fairness. What men tend to feel is that they can buy themselves out of childcare by earning more. And so they will come in and they will come home and they won't muck in necessarily because they feel that their fair contribution comes from higher earnings. And so we've got a whole lot of very complex things going on about how we think about fairness, which do not match.
Okay.
And absolutely, because they undervalue that the mother, who maybe is at home at that point, is not doing as much work, which is absolutely not the case.
But sometimes when men do a little bit of housework and are praised for it, they're kind of canonised.
Oh, which is why I will not say about the good men who are doing their share.
Thank you.
They
Right,
are the
Alison.
Why would you call them their share anyway?
Alison,
exactly, I wouldn't call them the good
Liz,
men.
I promise you.
They're not exceptional. That's what they should be doing.
Yeah, the norm. Yeah, the default position. Alison, you're worried about men being emasculated, aren't you? What do you mean?
Well, I am, because I think sometimes we tend to sort of think that men are just sort of pushed aside because of these very strong women. But actually, in my own family, I see my son doing a huge amount of childcare and all sorts of things. I mean, if there's a nappy to be changed, then he'll go and do it with that. Never gives the second thought to it. And I didn't see my husband doing quite that. So I think over 20, 30, 40 years, we've moved a long way in more and more men doing things, but we mustn't go so far as to push men into feeling that they are less important, less valuable, less worth than women.
Why would they feel that? Why would a man who is changing his child's nappy feel that that act is somehow making him less of a man or less valuable to the project of raising that child? I don't see why you would consider that to be a threat to masculinity, to be more involved.
I think we are in danger of women being so forceful today in saying, this is what you're going to do.
Where is this danger? Where is this danger?
Okay.
It's sitting on the front row.
These are fathers over here. They're the ones who are asking to be involved. They want to be involved. It's not women pushing them into it, it's the men themselves.
And it's also,
I think
but I want the men to be involved.
If I could just add that actually if there was shared parental leave, which we've talked about a lot, if men and women both had their time at home with the child, then they could make up their own minds about whether it was for them or not, how it would work in their family. At the moment, they don't have the chance.
It is also around the house what works for each individual couple. And in my own household, my husband happens to be a lot better at doing the yard work, and I am better at organising the birthday party.
You're so forceful. I come to the gentleman back there.
Britain could do a lot better, I think, with drawing men into childcare and parenthood. But as a father and now a grandfather, I have some experience of trying this myself. There are a couple of obstacles which one should mention. One is that women are far safer than men in nearly all respects. They're safer drivers, they commit less violent crime, and that's reflected in caring relationships, that men who care for children are much more likely to abuse them sexually or physically. That doesn't mean all men, but you look at the statistics, it's true that men are more riskier.
Catherine, you made a face of anguish and pain when our friend said that.
My baby son is 8 months old. And when he was 4 months old, I went back to work full-time. And my husband took additional parental leave for 3 months, which he's just coming to the end of. Less than 1% of couples in the country at the moment do that. And I think partly it's about visibility, that being known about. But when he went to make the request, and he works in a government department, large organisation, when he went to make the request for leave, they'd never heard of it in the HR department. And then they granted it to him, and then they granted it to him as though they were doing him a favour. Yeah. And he was very much reassured by everybody that it wouldn't at all affect his position and he would be able to come back in, and they weren't looking adversely at it at all. The sort of culture that I thought was from the 70s that still prevails, even in progressive clear-thinking organisations. Now, our experience has been, I think my husband has a newfound appreciation for the workplace after 3 months at home, because it is hard work. It is rewarding, but it is hard work. But my baby son, bless him, will come to me and love me, but he will now equally come to my husband, love him, be with him, and we are stronger as a family.
Well, it's better as a result. Cole, you've got I think 4 children, including triplets.
A 16-year-old and 3 12-year-olds.
3 triplets.
Yes.
My goodness.
What a joy they are.
Yeah, I'm sure they are a joy.
But they are now.
Hard work.
Yes, and I want to say very clearly that being a father does not emasculate a man. It can be the making of a man, actually.
Absolutely.
There isn't thank you. There isn't a man in the country who can stand up and say, I did enough, without getting attacked, actually, because you can never do enough. And I know full well that certain people will be watching this programme and saying, yeah, because I didn't do enough. But I was caught up in a crisis, particularly when the 3 came, and that forced me to reevaluate how I felt about it and how much I would get involved.
And you know what? At the end of when our time comes, there's no man who sits there and says, well, I'm glad I didn't spend more time with my children.
No, it's the greatest thing. And I think it's been, if there's anything to make, it's been the making of me. Because, they are fantastic and they have taught me a great deal. It's a terrible struggle sometimes.
I think
for both of us.
Women often...
Any audience? Owen, do you want to make a quick contribution to this?
Well, I just think it's interesting that what it is to be a man isn't static. And the changing role of men has to do a lot, and I don't think you'll like this, but to do with the women's movement and the LGBT movement. It's changed what it's to be a man. Men are more likely now to talk about their feelings, not enough. They're more likely to spend time with their children. They're more likely to have female friends on an equal footing as them, to have gay friends for that matter. And although they're not by any means doing enough around the house, you still, the number of house husbands has gone up to 10%, so it's increased hugely from a very low base. But what it is to be a man has changed for the better, because women, as a movement, and LGBT people have changed what's to be a man, and that's a good thing. That's something to be embraced.
Yep, you say that.
Oh, go on, Alison. Yeah, go on. Was it you, Alison? I heard a voice from over there.
Can I just make an observation? My cousin and her husband had their first child last night. It was a baby girl born last night.
Congratulations.
Congratulations to them all, but the child was born in Norway, where they've both been working for the last couple of years, and so both mother and father are sorting out these huge periods of parental leave, and that is going to change, of course, the first few months of their life and this child's life. And I think that's a very healthy arrangement. But of course,
so there's going to be flexible working at home, is there?
Well, that kind of regulation and state involvement in the laws around that is one thing. But the other side of the argument that Owen was talking about is just being a decent person, being someone who was brought up well to do your fair share, to help out, to be selfless, not selfish. I don't think that requires too many carrots and sticks, apart from when you're raising your children. Just
doing it clear without being asked. Is there a lady there? Yeah, allow me. Lady there, yes. Good morning. Hello.
To say, like, is it Anne? Yeah, I just think it's a bit ludicrous to say it's a threat to masculinity because you chose to bring a child into this world. If you're not willing to get hands-on and get involved as a woman does, then why put yourself in that situation?
And I do think intentions are good for many people, but it's the behaviour that takes time to catch up. Interesting, the point you made about the historical issue of slavery and this whole long thing. Honestly, it's incredible how behaviour takes a long time to catch up to the good intentions that many men have that I do want to help more.
Is it different in different communities in our very complex society?
Absolutely, because I was going to say that, growing up in the household I grew up in, we had to do everything. My parents had this philosophy that from you can pick up a broom, you learn to sweep. If you can hold a scouring pad, you scour a pot. And you had to learn to do everything, and that's how I've raised my children and my grandchildren.
I've raised my children.
Because then it doesn't become such an issue. So there may well be government, whatever it is, things that are in the way so you don't get the paternity leave, etc. But culturally, you're prepared for that. So when it does come, it should be a better society.
Glenn?
I think that's spot on, but I want to pick out one particular point here about the way we've actually framed this question.
We haven't got a lot of time.
OK, we talked earlier about why is it that black people aren't involved in the Church of England. That's a really good question to ask. It's a really good way to frame it. What is wrong with the institution that has black people not show up equally? We frame this question, what's wrong with men? Why are men shirking? What's the problem with men? Our whole conversation around gender in this country frames conversation around gender by saying men are problems and women have problems. We've got to change that mentality.
So we should have said
sexist
fathers are doing their fair share, aren't they?
No, but you wouldn't say our mothers shirking their fair share. When fathers bring home about two-thirds of the income in families, and they do about the third of the care, we don't say are women not doing their fair share in the workplace. We don't say that, but we say are men doing their fair share.
That's a debate, though, doesn't it?
Of course it does, but we need to go beyond that, Nicky. We need to go beyond that. It gets us started.
The language we use is all important. The phraseology we have is all important. I absolutely take that point. Listen, we're out of time, so thank you all very much for taking part.